I was 15 when I learned what it meant to be unwanted. The morning sun spilled through the cracks of our old wooden roof, painting streaks of gold across the dirt floor. My mother was gone by then, and my father, well, he had already decided I was too much trouble to keep. He stood at the door with his hat in his hands. "You'll live with Aunt Martha from now on," he said flatly. "She needs help around the house." I remember nodding, my heart sinking. Aunt Martha lived on the edge of town, a woman with eyes like cold glass. She didn't want me either, but she loved free labor. That first night I scrubbed her kitchen until my fingers bled. When I tried to eat, she slapped my hand. "You eat after you earn it," she said. Lying on the cold floor, I watched a spider crawl across the ceiling and thought of my mother's voice, the one that used to tell me I was meant for something more. But in that house, hope was a dangerous thing. Still, I whispered a promise to myself. Someday I'll leave this place. And when I do, I'll never let anyone make me feel small again. I discovered my gift by accident. One Sunday morning, Aunt Martha took me to church. The organist was sick and the pastor asked if anyone could play. My hands shook, but I raised my hand anyway. When my fingers touched the keys, the world fell away. The notes poured out like they'd been waiting inside me all along. When I finished, the room was silent. Then people began to cry. The pastor called me a miracle. Aunt Martha called me a show-off. That night, she locked the piano room and told me to forget about it. But music had already taken root inside me. It was the only thing that made me feel alive. So I played in secret. When everyone slept, I'd sneak into town and perform at the small cafe on the corner. The owner, Mrs. Lee, paid me with leftover bread. It wasn't money, but it was freedom. And for a few hours each night, I felt like someone worth seeing. When Aunt Martha found out, she dragged me by my hair down the porch steps. "You think you're special?" she hissed. "You're nothing. You'll never be anything." She burned my sheet music in the sink and banned me from leaving the house. I cried that night, not for the pain but for the loss. The ashes of my music floated in the air, tiny black wings disappearing into smoke. But something broke open inside me too. I realized no one was coming to save me. If I ever wanted a better life, I'd have to build it myself. 2 weeks later, I ran away. I had nothing but a torn dress, a loaf of bread, and a heart full of stubborn dreams. I slept under bridges, worked at diners, cleaned houses. Every time I thought about giving up, I remembered Aunt Martha's words, "You'll never be anything." It became my fire. I met Henry on a cold night outside the music hall. I was sweeping the sidewalk for tips when he stopped beside me. "You play?" he asked, pointing to the piano through the window. I hesitated, then nodded. He smiled and handed me his violin. "Then play with me." We played under the streetlight until dawn. Me on the keys, him on the strings. People passing by threw coins into my bucket. For the first time, I earned more than I could spend. Henry became my first real friend. He believed in me the way no one ever had. He told me I had a gift that could change my life. When he left town for an orchestra job, he gave me his old violin. "Keep it," he said. "Someday you'll play on a bigger stage than this." I didn't know it then, but his words would become my compass through years of storm. 2 years later, I auditioned for the State Conservatory. It was the chance of a lifetime, a way out of poverty, a step toward my dream. I practiced day and night. But on the morning of the audition, I woke to find my hands trembling uncontrollably. The doctor said it was nerve damage from years of overwork. When I touched the piano, the notes faltered. My gift, my only way out, was slipping away. I still went to the audition. I played through tears, every wrong note slicing through my hope like a blade. When I finished, no one clapped. That night, I sat by the river with Henry's violin in my lap and whispered, maybe I wasn't meant for music after all. But as the water shimmered in the moonlight, a small voice inside me said, no, you're meant for something deeper. I didn't understand what it meant then, but I would. I was 23 when I met Victor Hale. He was everything I wasn't, confident, rich, and untouchable. I met him at the restaurant where I waited tables. He wore a gray suit that looked like it cost more than my rent, and when he spoke, people listened. He noticed me because I remembered his order before he spoke. You have a good memory, he said, smiling. What are you doing here? I told him about my music, my failed audition, my dream that had died too soon. He listened, really listened, and for the first time in years I felt seen. When he left, he slipped me his card. If you ever need a job, call me. 2 weeks later I did. He hired me as his personal assistant. The office felt like another planet. Marble floors, glass walls, people who never looked tired. I told myself I'd only stay until I saved enough for lessons again. But Victor was kind. Too kind. He told me I had potential, called me brilliant, said he believed in me. I didn't know then that every kindness came with a price. Working for Victor felt like walking through a dream I didn't belong in. He took me to meetings, bought me dresses for a presentation, and praised me in front of clients. I started to think maybe he saw something real in me. Maybe this was my second chance. He taught me how to handle investors, read contracts, and navigate power. I worked late nights, made him millions, and smiled when he called me his lucky charm. Then one day I found out he'd registered my work under his name. Every idea, every deal, signed Victor Hale. When I confronted him, he laughed. Clara, don't be naive. This is business. You work for me, that means your ideas belong to me. My throat burned. But you promised. I promised to help you. And I did. He leaned closer. You should thank me. I left his office shaking, humiliated. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. I was trapped again, not by poverty this time, but by power. It was Aunt Martha all over again. Another person using my light to feed their shadow. A week later, Victor fired me. No explanation, no goodbye, just a letter and a paycheck that felt like blood money. I later learned why. He'd been having an affair with one of the investors, and she didn't like how much attention he gave me. The rumors spread fast. People said I'd slept my way up, that I'd betrayed him, that I was unstable. I tried to defend myself, but no one listened. The world believed the man in the suit, not the girl who used to scrub floors. I packed my things and left the city. I ended up in a small coastal town, working as a cleaner in a hotel. The piano in the lobby became my only friend. Every night after closing, I played quietly, not for money or applause, but to remember who I was before the world broke me. Sometimes I imagined Victor walking in and realizing what he'd lost. But he never did. And maybe that was the first step toward freedom, realizing I didn't need him to. Years passed quietly. I turned 30 without a cake, without friends, without much to show for my youth. But something was changing inside me. I started saving again, a few dollars from every paycheck until I could afford night classes. I studied accounting, then business. If people like Victor could steal from me once, they wouldn't again. One evening, as I wiped down the mirrors in the hotel ballroom, I caught my reflection and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were tired, yes, but fierce. Her posture straight. Her silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was control. That night, the hotel owner, Mr. Lawson, heard me playing. You shouldn't be cleaning floors, he said. You should be running this place. He offered me a promotion, front desk manager. It wasn't wealth, but it was dignity. For the first time since I was a child, I felt like I was building something of my own. And I made myself another promise. Next time life knocks, I won't open the door empty-handed. 5 years later, he walked into the hotel lobby. Victor Hale, older, still sharp, still perfectly pressed. I almost dropped the pen in my hand. He didn't recognize me at first. Reservation under Hale, he said, smiling politely. 1 suite, 2 nights. When our eyes met, something flickered in his. Surprise, maybe guilt. I smiled calmly. Welcome back, Mr. Hale, I said. We've upgraded your room on the house. He thanked me, oblivious to the storm behind my calm face. Later that night, I stood by the lobby window watching him toast champagne with his new business partners. The man who once stole my ideas was now seeking investors again, and I happened to know the very people funding his next project. I didn't plan revenge. But life has a way of delivering justice in strange, poetic ways. All I had to do was stand still, and let the truth find its way home. I didn't sleep the night Victor returned. His presence stirred ghosts I'd buried beneath years of work and silenced. The next morning I passed him in the hallway. He paused, studying me like a half-forgotten melody. Clara, he said quietly, you look different. I grew up, I replied. He smiled faintly, but there was sadness in it. Later that day I learned his company was struggling. The same investors he'd charmed years ago were now pulling out. His empire was cracking, quietly, the way pride always does before it falls. And I, of all people, was handling his reservation extension, hearing whispers from guests about his losses. When I saw him later at the bar, alone, nursing a glass of whiskey, I felt something strange. Not satisfaction, just a heavy, quiet ache. He looked up and caught my eye. You ever wish you could start over? I hesitated. Sometimes. But I've learned that starting over doesn't mean erasing what happened. It means surviving it. He nodded slowly. You always had a way with words. And in that dim light I realized he wasn't my enemy anymore. He was just another soul learning the hard way what it meant to lose everything that couldn't be bought. Victor stayed another week. Each morning he'd linger by the lobby piano while I organized check-ins. One night I found him sitting there, fingers hovering above the keys. I didn't know you still played, he said. I never stopped. He smiled wistfully. I remember the girl who said music was her heartbeat. I stole that heartbeat, didn't I? His honesty stunned me. I wanted to say yes, to remind him of everything he'd taken, but the truth was life had already done that for me. Instead I said softly, you gave me something too. You showed me how fragile success is without soul. He looked down. I destroyed more than I built. Then build something better, I said. Not for the world, for yourself. When I walked away my heart was shaking. Forgiveness wasn't a clean thing. It was a wound that stopped bleeding slowly. The next morning his suite was empty. Only his room key lay on the desk, wrapped in a napkin. On it he'd written, "You were right, Clara. This time I'll build with my own hands." Months passed. I poured myself into my work. Under Mr. Lawson's guidance, the hotel grew and so did I. He made me the operations head, saying, "You run this place like it's your own heartbeat." Sometimes when the night air carried music from the ballroom, I'd pause and listen. I'd think of my mother, of Aunt Martha, of Victor. Every one of them had shaped me, in pain, in loss, in unexpected grace. Then one evening a woman approached me at the front desk. She was from the State Conservatory, the same place that once rejected me. "We're expanding into community programs," she said. "Mr. Hale recommended you to lead the outreach division." My breath caught. "Victor Hale?" "Yes," she said, smiling. "He said you were the most gifted woman he ever met." That night I sat by the ocean and cried, not from sadness, but from the quiet mercy of life coming full circle. Even broken people can send light forward, I thought. Even those who once hurt us can plant redemption in our path. I accepted the offer. My first day back at the conservatory felt like stepping into a dream I'd once mourned. The marble halls still gleamed, the pianos still whispered stories. But this time I wasn't a trembling girl with shaking hands. I was a woman who had learned to make music out of silence. I began teaching children from poor neighborhoods, kids with rough voices and tender hearts. One girl, Lila, reminded me of myself, barefoot, wide-eyed, afraid to touch the keys. When she played her first song, she looked up at me and said, "Do you think I'm good enough?" I smiled through tears. "You're more than good enough. You're meant for this." And for the first time, I understood why my gift had survived through all the pain. It wasn't meant to make me rich or famous. It was meant to heal others. That night I wrote in my journal, "What Aunt Martha tried to crush, life has made unbreakable." One evening as the sun melted into the horizon, a letter arrived at the conservatory. It was from Victor. He'd started a charity foundation for women in business, named it the Clara Foundation. The letter said, "You taught me what real wealth is. I spent years collecting things that shined and not one of them gave me peace. You lost everything and still found meaning. I envy that. Thank you for showing me the kind of riches money can't buy." I pressed the paper to my chest and wept. Not for him, but for the long winding road that had brought both of us to this moment. Forgiveness didn't erase the past. It transfigured it. Somewhere deep inside I knew this was the final chord of an old song, the kind that ends not in triumph but in truth. As the evening light faded, I sat at the piano and played Henry's violin theme on the keys. The notes floated out into the twilight, soft as prayer, tender as peace. For the first time in my life I didn't need applause. I didn't need to prove anything. I had everything money could not buy. And it was enough. Success came slowly, like dawn seeping through fog. The conservatory's outreach program began to flourish. Every week new children arrived, shy, hungry, trembling with the same fear I once carried. I saw myself in each of them and I taught with gentleness carved from old pain. Lila, my brightest student, had a mother who cleaned houses and often came to class in worn shoes. One afternoon she whispered, "Miss Clara, Mama says music doesn't pay the bills." I smiled softly. Maybe not at first. But music pays the soul, and that's what keeps you standing when the bills come. That night I walked home under a pale moon thinking about how far I'd come. I had no mansion, no fame, but I had purpose. A steady warmth that money could never touch. And yet deep down there was a strange ache. Not loneliness exactly. More like a quiet wondering. Was this peace all I was meant for, or was there still one note left unsung in my life? 2 years passed before I saw Victor again. He arrived unannounced at the conservatory, looking thinner, humbler, like a man who had finally learned to live with his own reflection. "Clara," he said, his voice low, "I didn't want to disturb your work. I just wanted to see the woman who changed my life." I invited him into my small office. His eyes roamed the framed photos of children at pianos, laughter frozen in time. "You did this," he murmured. "You turned pain into something holy." I smiled faintly. We both did in our own ways. He handed me a check, a donation for the foundation. "Not to repay you," he said quickly, "but to join you. I want to help." For a moment, silence stretched between us. I could see the old Victor flicker behind his tired eyes, the pride, the charm, but now it was tempered by humility. "Help me then," I said softly. "But this time let it be for them, not for us." He nodded, and for the first time I believed him. That winter, tragedy struck. Mr. Lawson, my mentor and the man who first believed in me, passed away suddenly. His loss hit me like a falling tree, sharp, loud, irreversible. The hotel, the conservatory, even the music seemed quieter without his steady laugh in the halls. At his memorial, Victor stood beside me. "He'd be proud of you," he said. Tears blurred my vision. "He's the reason I learned to stand tall. Every good thing in my life started with someone who chose kindness over power." Victor turned to me. "Then I want to be that kind of person too." He paused, then added quietly, "You taught me that love isn't always about taking someone's hand. Sometimes it's about letting them walk their own road, and praying they find peace there." That night, I walked home in the rain, soaked and shivering, but inside I felt clean, like grief had washed away the last pieces of bitterness I didn't know I was still carrying. The city organized a winter concert, a charity event for children in the arts. They asked me to direct it. I hesitated at first, afraid to return to a stage, afraid the trembling in my hands might return. But Lila looked up at me with shining eyes and said, "You have to, Miss Clara. We need to see you believe again." So I did. The night of the concert, the hall was filled with soft gold light. The children played like angels. When it was my turn, I sat at the grand piano, the same kind I'd once only dreamed of touching. My hands shook, but the moment I pressed the first key, everything inside me went still. I played for my mother, for Aunt Martha, for Henry, for Mr. Lawson, for Victor, for every person who had carved sorrow into my life until it became something beautiful. When the last note faded, the room was silent. Then applause rose like a wave. But even above it, I heard something else, the quiet hum of peace in my chest. Afterward, Victor approached, eyes glistening. "You've finally come home," he said softly. "No," I whispered. Home came back to me. Months later, the foundation opened its first independent academy, free lessons, instruments for underprivileged children, food, and a place to dream. The sign above the door read, "The Clara Hale Center for Music and Hope." Victor had insisted on adding his last name to mine. I had resisted at first, but he said, "You taught me grace. Let this name stand for what we built together, not out of romance but redemption." On opening day, Lila performed the first piece I'd ever taught her, the one I once played under a streetlight with Henry's violin. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "You always said music could heal. I believe you now." I smiled, tears burning my eyes. Then my work is done. Later that night, as I stood outside watching children laugh through the windows, Victor joined me quietly. He didn't speak, he didn't have to. Our silence said everything. That pain could transform, that loss could bloom into love that asked for nothing. I looked up at the stars and thought of my mother's voice, long ago, telling me I was meant for something more. She had been right. I didn't become rich in gold or fame, but I had built a kingdom of light. And at last I understood. I had everything money could not buy. And I had become the woman I was always meant to be. It was late one evening when I found the letter. I'd been organizing old files at the academy, the kind of small, comforting work that quiets the mind. In the bottom drawer of my desk, tucked beneath stacks of receipts and faded sheet music, I saw an envelope addressed in a familiar hand. It was from Victor. My heart stilled as I opened it. The ink had faded, but his words were clear. Clara, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I wanted to leave you something more than apologies. You gave me a chance to live a life with meaning. The check I gave you wasn't the real gift. The real one is the shares I transferred quietly in your name. The academy is fully yours. No board, no investors, no one to claim it but you. Don't mourn me. Just keep playing. That's how you save people like me. Tears slipped down my cheeks, falling onto the paper. I pressed my hand over his words, feeling the echo of his presence. He had left just as he had entered my life, quietly, profoundly, like a chapter that ended itself without permission. That night I played the piano alone in the dark. Each note felt like a goodbye and a blessing all at once. A month after Victor's passing, a new student arrived. A small girl with tangled hair and a red scarf around her neck. Her name was Ava. She was 9, silent and skittish. She reminded me of myself, eyes wide with a kind of watchful fear. For weeks she refused to speak. But one day as I played softly in the classroom she came closer. Why do you close your eyes when you play? She asked. Because music is how I see the truth, I told her. When I close my eyes the world stops pretending. From then on she stayed after class to listen. She began to hum along. Slowly she started to play, her small fingers trembling on the keys. One afternoon I caught her mother crying in the hallway. She hasn't spoken since her father left, she whispered. But when she's here she hums. You've done something no one else could. I smiled through my own tears. No, I said softly. The music did. In Ava I saw the circle complete, pain giving birth to beauty again just as it once had in me. I realized then that my story was no longer just mine. It had become a melody that would keep playing long after I was gone. The academy grew. Awards, grants, recognition. All the things I once dreamed of came, but I found myself thinking less of fame and more of silence. Some nights I sat by the window staring at the city lights below, wondering if I'd done enough. The ghosts of my past still visited sometimes. Aunt Martha's voice, my father's indifference, the ache of being unseen. But now I faced them differently. When the memories rose I whispered thank you. Thank you for the pain that carved room for grace. Thank you for the hunger that taught me compassion. Thank you for the loneliness that made me strong enough to stand alone. I understood now that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about transforming it into something holy. And so I began writing my memoir, not to boast but to tell the truth the way I once couldn't. Each page felt like confession and release, a hymn to every girl who had ever been told she wasn't enough. The title came easily, she had everything money could not buy. Ava's first recital arrived on a spring evening bathed in golden light. Parents filled the small auditorium and I sat quietly in the front row. When Ava stepped onto the stage her red scarf fluttered like a banner of courage. She took a deep breath and began to play the piece I had written years ago, the song for tomorrow. Her fingers were uncertain at first, then steady, then strong. Halfway through she glanced at me and I nodded, tears glistening. When she finished the applause filled the room like thunder. But all I heard was the quiet heartbeat of hope, alive again in a new soul. Afterward she ran into my arms. Did I make you proud, Miss Clara? I smiled, pressing my hand to her cheek. You made me believe, all over again. That night as the stars blinked above the academy roof, I whispered into the night sky, it's done. The pain, the hunger, the long road, they had all led here. To one small girl who dared to believe in beauty again. Years later, when my hands grew too frail to play, I spent my days by the window of my office, listening to the music drifting from the classrooms below. The academy thrived under new teachers, many of them my former students. Laughter and piano chords filled the halls like sunlight. Sometimes I thought of Victor. Of Henry. Of my mother. Of the girl who once slept on cold floors and whispered to spiders. She was gone now but not lost. She had become every note that floated through these rooms, every tear wiped from a child's face, every spark of hope that music ignited. On my last evening I asked them to open the windows. The sunset poured in like liquid fire. I sat at the piano one last time and played softly, my fingers trembling but sure. It wasn't a song of sorrow, it was gratitude. As the final note faded, I closed my eyes and smiled. Somewhere far away I imagined my mother's voice again. You were meant for something more, Clara. And this time I whispered back, I found it, Mama. I did. The light lingered long after the music stopped. And though my body stilled, my melody lived on, in every heart that remembered that even the poorest soul can become the richest in spirit. Because she had everything money could not buy. And she left behind the one thing that never dies: hope.